Kia koutou, and welcome to another episode of South Pacific Muscle with myself, Mr. Downtown Brown himself, Mike Tabb. And today our special guest joining us, New Zealand CrossFit legend, Kevin Manuel from the Hawke's Bay. How are you, Kevin?
Very good, thank you. Very good, thanks, Nate. Thanks for having me, Mike. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. It's nice to do a podcast again. It's been a minute.
Good times.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting for us because, we're pretty renowned bodybuilders for being, giving everyone, fairly close eye and vocal criticism, I suppose. And CrossFitters really probably caught a bit of that. Powerlifters caught a lot of it. It's just one of those things. But myself, being around the gym sports for quite some time, when I've looked across at high-level CrossFit athletes, there's nothing but respect for the just the work ethic that those guys have in yourself and how strong those guys really are, as well as being incredibly fit. So, in that kind of vein, I guess I was really interested to have you on so that we could sort of talk about, what is CrossFit, where did it come from, and all those types of things, so that for those of us that do our meathead thing in the gym, we can have a better understanding of it, and rather than, I guess, the our limited view, which is Rogue belts and CrossFit shoes by Reebok, and that was probably about our knowledge. So it'd be really cool to talk. But before we do that, I really want you to give us a bit about your background, early sports and things that you did and how you kind of fell into CrossFit, because for those that don't know, Kevin was the first New Zealand man to do the CrossFit Games, World Games. So, you're sort of pioneering, I guess, in terms of New Zealand athletes. So, love to hear a bit about your early days.
Yeah, awesome. No worries. Thanks for that. So like most, I was born in South Africa for a start. Lived there till I was about 16 odd years old. Moved over to New Zealand in 2003. And like most, I guess, South African and Kiwi kids, I grew up playing rugby. It's pretty stock standard, I think, for most kids, and loved the sport. Absolutely, like, it was my passion. It was my dream to be a professional rugby player one day. And I think, I guess it's that hindsight thing. If I knew now, or I could implement the work ethic that CrossFit eventually taught me, I probably could have got further. I made a couple of rep teams. I made the Hawke's Bay under 21s, and then I got selected for the Hawke's Bay Development Academy. And then I broke my leg in pieces in a rugby game. So I was playing down in Central Hawke's Bay, and in a tackle, snapped the compound fracture of my tib fib. And so what happened was, obviously, I had to take a back seat in the whole rugby thing for a couple of years. It was a good year to year and a half rehab to get my leg to where it was. And sort of from there, I started using CrossFit as a little bit of a tool to get fit again and a little bit stronger. Coincidentally, the gym I was training at, which was Peak Fitness in Havelock North, it was owned at that stage by a guy called Andy Burham, who's sort of a local club rugby legend, also a few games for the Magpies at one point, I think. So he let a bunch of us rugby Havelock club players train there, and so on and so forth. And one of the PTs in that gym, he was sort of talking to us rugby guys about this thing called CrossFit, and none of us knew what it was. And so he sort of started giving us just a few very basic, very easy, uncomplex, I guess, workouts to do. That's CrossFit related, which was very much just circuit-based stuff. Very simple, just jump on the rower, row a few hundred meters or a couple of 100 meters, straight into some burpees, straight into some pull-ups, super basic things that you don't need massive techniques for, no lifts or anything like that at that stage. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was like, just do this 5 times, like do these 3 things 5 times. And it was like a 200-meter row, which you're like, oh, easy, no problems. But then the combination of everything together and then trying to repeat it over and over again absolutely destroyed all of us, and
Can
so
I
we
just to interject there for a second?
yeah, of course.
When you're doing something like that, would your opinion be that most people physically can't do it, or mentally they give up first?
On basic things like that, it's mental, because I feel like everybody with a little bit of practice, maybe that's jumping the gun a little bit. So I feel like in anything in the gym, and you guys may or may not agree, but I feel like everybody should have a little bit of guidance, especially to start off with. But at that time, we had a little bit of experience just doing, I guess, rugby gym training, just your general, the leg presses, bench press, all that type of stuff. So we've been doing that for a couple of years. So we've got very, very basic skills in the gym at that stage. And sort of we quite often use the rower to warm up with or whatever. So we knew how to row. And obviously pull-ups at that stage for us was just the thing, like just hang from the bar and try and pull yourself over. And like, I guess growing up as a rugby player, like your power to body weight ratios is reasonably okay. So we had, maybe 5 or 6 pull-ups in us before we had to jump down, have a rest, and then go again, do another 2 or 3, and then jump down, have a rest, and go again. So I think you need basic skills, but for those basic things, let's say, for example, a row with some burpees or even a sprint in there somewhere, and then maybe some pull-ups or even push-ups or air squats, anything that you're not going to injure yourself with. I feel like so much of that is mental, is being able to push yourself mentally further than what your body's telling you it can do, because your body can. Your body can do so much more than what you think it can. It just starts, our body's a little, wusses, like they sort of like start hurting and they're like, stop. But it's your mind that pushes you that extra little bit. That's the difference between first and second place. Is not, if you're competing at a high level at any sport, the difference between winning and losing is the top 2 inches. And, it's a cliche, but it is 100% true.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, that's cool. I think that principle applies across, as you say, at any sport at a high level, I think. And,
very transferable skill, isn't it?
Oh, hugely transferable.
Not just within sort of the fitness realm, it's transferable to other areas. Push through.
Yeah, absolutely. And it applies to team sports as well. You got the guys that can stay calm and keep their cool the best. Normally the guys that come out on top, and the All Blacks, really good example of that. And how many times have they been in a situation in the last 10, 15 minutes, they've been behind on the scoreboard. It's almost like the other teams start panicking because they're ahead. They don't expect to be where they are. They start panicking. The All Blacks just stay calm. They take over, and that their record speaks for itself. It's and a lot of that. I've had the privilege of listening to a sports psychologist that worked with All Blacks a little bit. His name eludes me, unfortunately, but I listened to a couple of speeches.
Anoka, is it?
Pardon me?
Gilbert Anoka, was it? He worked with the All Blacks.
Oh, maybe. Sorry, I can't remember. I went with my father-in-law one time, and that was all he preached. It was all that mental, that just calm, stay cool, remember your training, trust your training, trust your patterns, all those types of things. And it was a real eye-opener. It was amazing to hear,
How good is that message for bodybuilders, Mike, especially when you're prepping for a show? Just stay calm, do what you plan to do, and trust the process, trust your coach, and just don't make any rash decisions. Hold your cool. And I guess, that I know that certainly applies to strongman. I remember them talking about I think it was Yuka Hola, and they said, he could be down 10 points with 3 events to go, and he would just kill himself in every event. And often he would win it in the last event because he'd managed to mentally stay in the game. Whereas, when you're sort of, behind the 8 ball and time's coming up, or, you're running out of events or whatever it might be, if you're just holding that cool together. And, I've even seen that on a bodybuilding stage where someone's clearly the winner, and someone else just keeps posing hard and challenging them in every pose and hitting every pose and keeping the stomach tight every time and just doing all the things that they've practiced to do, and that person walks away with the title, and you think, you know, they earned that title by following a process that they had trained themselves to do. So
absolutely, because that's what's in your control, right? It's your process that you've practiced over and over again, and that's all that's in your control. You can't control what the guy next to you is doing, or the guy in front of you, or if you're in combat sports, the guy across from you. You know, you can only control your own, I guess, your own process, your own training. And that's why, you know, you bust your ass in training, because that's what that gives you. It gives you the confidence, the frame of mind, the calmness to be able to perform when the time comes. That's so true.
Right, back to you know, you'd be given these sort of intro sort of level CrossFit exercises at Peak Fitness, and
so so from there it really just took off. So I loved it. I've always been a sucker for punishment. I quite like pushing the limits on things. I've always been like that as a kid. Whether it's how high a balcony can I jump off without breaking my leg, or how high a hill can I sprint down without falling over, things like that. So I've always been sort of a limit pusher, I guess. And so after we had a little taste and we played that next rugby season, I got my rehab done. That next season, I was the fittest I've ever been in my life. I felt like I had a third lung on the rugby field. And I was like, man, this really worked. And I think at that point, it only worked because I've never really trained that hard in my life prior to it. It was sort of just giving me a glimpse of what hard work can actually achieve, you know, like, or what you can achieve, with hard work. Because at that point, I don't think I ever worked hard yet. You know, it was sort of, I was coasting.
That's really interesting, because most of our guys that have come into powerlifting and strongman through rugby have kind of said, oh, I played rugby and I sort of, you know, I was training in the gym, and then I started liking the gym more than I did the rugby, etc., that kind of thing. But your story is more a case of, you know, you tried this training out, you went back and played rugby, and the success of that season in terms of being so much fitter and seeing what you could achieve with hard work kind of drove your passion to work harder, I guess.
Yeah, it did. You're correct. It did. I guess the thing was, at that point, which I didn't know at the time, this was around 2010. It's when I played my last season of rugby. And at that time, CrossFit, which was at that point, just, I guess CrossFit's just a brand, you know, it's a brand name. But at that time, the brand name created the CrossFit Games. I think the first CrossFit Games was in 2007. And it was basically in the director of the CrossFit Games' backyard. He had a bit of a farm, like a lifestyle block. It was in his backyard. It was a bunch of guys that you don't even have to qualify. They just kind of picked them because there were so few people doing it at that time competitively, that they kind of just, you know, you signed up. They sent out a something on the internet and you signed up, and they're like, right, come along. And so it started building. And in 2010 was the first year they took it a little bit bigger, because there was so much demand for it. People were from all over the world started to try and sign up. They started to make you have to qualify, and they did it in different areas, obviously. So we had like the Australian sanctional, there was a European sanctional, and so on and so forth. And then the top 3 and that sanctional qualified and then got to go to the CrossFit Games. And so when it started becoming competitive, I started watching it on YouTube and on the internet, and really, really enjoyed it. You know, the combinations of things they put together. And at that point, we were starting to learn the Olympic lifts. We started to learn a little bit more about powerlifting, because it's all of those things to an extent are incorporated into CrossFit. Essentially, when you turn up on competition day, and if you're competing at an elite level, like the top division, you have to be able to do everything they put in front of you. So whether that be walking on
just before you kick on, is there, you know, when you do a strongman comp, you know, probably 3 months out, they let you know what the events are. If you turn up to a CrossFit comp, do you know exactly what events you're going to be doing at that particular comp?
Not at all. So
it
depends. It depends on the competition. So if it's just some local competitions, because obviously out of that branched local gyms hosting competitions in New Zealand, for example, which now there's the New Zealand Nationals, there's like bunch of local competitions with a bit of prize money up for grab that is unrelated to their CrossFit Games. Yep. So, you know, doing the New Zealand Nationals and winning it, for example, is not going to get you to the CrossFit Games. You have to do the actual, there's a process, a CrossFit Games qualification process. Yep. And it's like 4 or 5 steps that 3 or 4 stages that you have to go through to actually get there. And obviously less and less people make it through to the next stage and so on and so forth. But let's take New Zealand Nationals as a really good example, because it is New Zealand's best individual competition. It is incredibly well run, incredibly professionally run. There's good prize money up for grabs. There's good prizes, good sponsors, and you actually feel like an athlete when you go to it. It's really, really well run. A guy from, he lives in actually Palmerston North now, called Michael Gillam, runs it. And excuse me. So, for example, this last year's Nationals, we turned up and we knew nothing. For example, the first event last year, he said for us to be at the stadium at a certain time, loaded us all into a bus. We drove for about 30 minutes to the base of this hill. Didn't know what we were doing. He said, get out of the bus, warm up. We're like, warm up for what? So don't worry about it, warm up. I mean, we had a good idea because we're at the base of this giant hill. So we're like, right, we're going to run up this hill now. Just before we took off, he pulled up a trailer. On the back of the trailer was a bunch of sandbags. He's like, right, everyone grab a sandbag each. So, right, run up this hill with a sandbag for time. So we ended up sprinting up this hill, and then, you know, an hour or two, well, probably a couple of hours later, you're into event 2. And event 2 might be like a Metcon, for example, which is, it could be do 5 rounds of a 250-meter row, 20 kettlebell swings, and 30 single-legged squats, air squats, just body weight squats, and then do that 5 times as fast as you can. And then after that, for example, we had a clean and jerk ladder on Saturday night, this last Nationals, which is you started at a lighter barbell. You do 5 repetitions, like 5 clean and jerks of the lighter barbell. You move forward, you do 4 of a little bit heavier, 3 of a little bit heavier, 2, and then 1, and so on and so forth. And the 1 gets quite heavy. So it's being able to move reasonable weight for you guys, like strongman, bodybuilding, and even powerlifting. The weights we move is not comparable, but for us, it's still reasonably heavy weights, you know.
I've looked at some of the guys' lifts, and you know, like things like squats and deadlift, you know, not a problem for us.
Not comparable, yeah.
But you know, when I watch them doing the reps and they're doing 20 rep sets of deadlifts or something, I kind of, you know, but the thing that did strike me though as very impressive were, you know, from a bodybuilder's perspective or a powerlifter's perspective, the Olympic lift weights that the CrossFit guys were doing, the elite CrossFit guys, are way heavier than what we could do. We wouldn't have I mean, our technique is obviously terrible. We do things like power cleans occasionally, but you know, even like looking at the weights, you know, in any of those sort of Olympic movements, I think you wouldn't find many people, unless they were Olympic lifters, that wouldn't find those weights quite impressive. So
yeah, so I think if there is one thing that the CrossFit guys do really well, it is the Olympic lifts. It's obviously very technique based. You know, you can muscle a barbell so far, and then you're going to hit a plateau, and then after that, it's all about technique. The only way you make those small gains is by dialing in your technique, so it's super important. And the thing is about, like, let's take the deadlift, for example, right? Powerlifting movement. And, you know, like I've done powerlifting seminars to improve my deadlift and my squat. So the cool thing about CrossFit is it puts you in touch with so many different people and so many different athletes from different sports. You know, I had Nigel Avery as an Olympic lifting coach, you know, Commonwealth gold medalist, and silver, I think, as
I
well.
see Richie Patterson, he's been pretty heavily involved with CrossFit as well. So
Richie Patterson's helped me a hell of a lot over the years, you know. And for powerlifting, for example, guy, Hayden. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot his last name. He's from Waikato as well. He's a smaller guy, so he's a lighter division. And
Strawn, is it Strawn? No,
it's not Strawn. Sorry. But I did a 3-day powerlifting seminar.
Yeah.
Just purely, we did a lift each day, and they just dialed in our technique, you know, just helping us with those little bits and pieces to get better. And then obviously, a lot of the stuff in CrossFit is performed at high repetition. But if you perform something that's reasonably heavy at high repetition, you're going to hurt yourself. So it's all about dialing in the technique. Everything is about just dialing in the technique so you don't get hurt. You know, it's because you get guys that are in CrossFit for a year and they make this big uproar and then they get hurt because they try and muscle everything or they just blast everything out. But the guys that survive in the sport are the guys that really focus on technique, focus on doing the little things correct. Their movement is impeccable. Flexibility is impeccable. You know, there's just no room to get hurt. They can bend in all different ways. So that's the key, is to be able to adapt, but also not to be, I guess, arrogant in the fact that, like, I can do a deadlift, no problem. Well, that's not true. You know, there's so much, like, people think a deadlift is you stand by the bar and you lift it. There's so much to a deadlift to make it a successful lift, and not successful meaning a successful rep, just the fact you're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to, you know, all those types of things. And I think that's important to, you know, for CrossFit athletes to realize, and the top guys do. The top guys train with
how many different coaches or you know, I'm talking about like sports psychologists and things like that, nutritionists. It's someone at that elite level, would they generally have a team of multidisciplinary athletes and coaches that assist them?
100%. 100%. Like, let's take, for example, he's just retired, but Matt Fraser, who's the 5-time world champion, he had some of the world's best triathletes that he worked with, right? A guy called Chris Henshaw, who's all about aerobic capacity. He worked with him for his engine, right? His swimming technique, his running technique, his rowing, cycling, all that type of stuff. Worked exclusively with him. He's worked with weightlifting coaches. He's worked with powerlifting coaches. He's worked with gymnastics coaches. You know, so you literally break the entire sport down and you find the person in that line. Like, if you want to be the best, you find the person in that lane that can teach you. Like, he was at one point going to, he's an American guy, but he was going to high schools and training with high school kids for sprinting. You know, like, he was sprinting with the high school kids because he was so bad at sprinting. He had the humility to be able to go, well, I need to get better at this. And he went and sought out a good high school that allowed him to train. And the coach was like, I'll help you. And he got incredibly good at sprinting. So it's a full-time job these days, you know, to be an elite level CrossFit athlete, like anything else, like bodybuilding, like powerlifting. If you want to be the best of the best, it's a full-time job now, you know. So
tell us how you actually got involved in your first competitions and how that led to your path to the World CrossFit Games.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just give you a quick, brief overview of how the qualification process works. It just helps with the story. So there used to be, it's changed a little bit now, but when I was coming up, there used to be 3 stages. It was the Open, which was kind of like an online worldwide thing. So, but you were divided into regions. So I needed to, if the entire world do the same 5 events over 5 weeks, you need to get in the top 30 in your region to then qualify. So for example, I was in the Australian region or Australasia region. So out of maybe 15,000 people, you need to get into the top 30 after that 5 weeks to then be able to go to what they call regionals. Now, regionals used to be a 3-day competition, and it was always held in Sydney or Wollongong, just south of Sydney. So you'd fly there, you'd compete Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you'd do anywhere between, it was generally 6 or 7 events over the 3 days. And then there, you had to get within it was originally the top 3, but they extended that to the top 5 to then qualify to go to the World Champs, which was held in America. So essentially, when you start doing the Open, there might be 200,000 people or 300,000 people worldwide doing it. That gets narrowed down to 30 in each region, obviously men and women, so 30 men, 30 women. And then from there, you got to get top 3 or top 5. It was the first 3 years I think I did it was top 3. And then after that, they moved to the top 5. And so,
wow, that's a hell of a qualification to, we kind of look at it and go, we've got a place at the regionals to get to the nationals, and I might have to beat 2 or 3 people. But ours is, the numbers are so much smaller. What I'm saying is that you're talking about 15,000 in your pool. If we look at, if I took bodybuilding and overall, you might be talking about a couple of hundred athletes at the most in the country.
Oh, really?
So from a numbers perspective, you've certainly got a lot there. I don't know what the caliber of athletes was like then versus now. Is it
it's changed, yeah. So yeah, it's become a professional sport. So when I was doing it, I mean, I was full-time. I own a business, full-time working, and then going to the gym a couple of hours every night after work. Luckily my work's reasonably physical, so I do contracting work, so I get to play outside and lift things and do stuff. So I kind of try to use as much as I can work for training as well. But anyways, so I qualified for my first regionals in 2012, and I went there, and I went to Wollongong to compete there. So at that point in 2012, 13 and 14, it was the top 3 people went to the games. And so it was my first one. I was like, I've only been doing it for, I think at that point, just over a year. I didn't expect much. And then I ended up coming 8th out of the 30 guys there. Was it 8th or 11th? No, sorry. I think it was 11th. Sorry. 11th out of the 30 guys there. And I was reasonably happy with that. I had a couple of events that I guess the atmosphere got the better of me, and I went out a little bit too hot out of the gates, and I blew out towards the end. I just made silly mistakes, and I didn't trust my training, like we spoke about before. I didn't trust my training. I moved from my diet, like I diverted from my plan, and it failed, and I paid the price. And anyway, so then in 2013 and in 2014, I came fourth equal. Which means I was 1 spot out of qualifying for the CrossFit Games. And which was like, when I got it in 2013, I was stoked. I was like, yes. When it happened again in 2014, I was like, damn it. I was 1 spot out again. Like, what could I have done differently on the weekend to make that spot? It's like 1 second here, extra repetition there, like one time where you take a breath where you should have just been a little bit harder and gone, like little rest that the opponent didn't. And then in 2015 they increased the amount of people that go, because they made less regions across the world. So there's always only 40 guys that go, 40 qualified worldwide to go to the games. So when there was 3, there were more regions. They reduced the amount of regions, so they upped it to 5. And in 2015 I came 4th again. So 3 years in a row I came 4th. But obviously with that I managed to qualify.
Wow.
And to me, I mean, that's a very quick overview. There's a lot of
that must have been you skipped over that moment pretty quickly, but like to finally qualify after 2 years of being the bridesmaid must have been real vindication for you for the work you'd put in.
So I don't know, how deep do you want me to go into this? Because
fire away, man.
Okay, so in 2015, that was a massive changing point for me. So at that point, I think, Nate, I talked to you the other night about your sport becoming your identity, and you struggled to let go of that identity. So in 2015, I, at that point, so missed out by 1 spot twice in a row. And that year, that qualification to get to regionals, which is the stage just before the games, was the hardest year I've ever had. I've never had any issues qualifying that year because of that pressure I was putting on myself, because it's like, I cannot let this happen a third time. I cannot miss out by one spot a third time. And so I created this, this non-existent pressure in my head, in my own head. It was something that I created in myself, that just about put me out of the season. I felt incredibly ill during the first stage of qualification. Purely, I think I ran myself down with stress and with pressure, to a point where I was bedridden. I would get out of bed with a fever. I'd go do the qualifying event, like just absolutely try my best to get through it, crawl my way back into bed with fever. Like it was the biggest struggle mentally I've had in my life, because I created this persona within inside myself that was just not me. I let the love go. Like the reason I got into doing this, all of that went out the window. It was purely pressure, and just.
We all know that one. We all know that one, don't we, Mike? Like I'm sitting here nodding my head, thinking, how many times have you done that to yourself? And I think maybe that's something that comes hand in hand with the determination and the drive and the focus that you have, that you need to become an elite level athlete. And on the flip side of that, all that pressure, if it's not managed properly, can lead to some pretty bad outcomes, really, and be detrimental to your performance.
Well, 100%, and it was. That pressure was 100% detrimental, and I don't, excuse me, I don't know how I managed to qualify that year, but somehow, again, like you said, it was probably just pure determination that got me through. I managed to qualify. Like I had to have, because it was 5 weeks of qualification, that fifth week I was outside that 30 bubble. I had to pull something, like I had to pull finger like I never have in that last event to get through, to get in that top 30, and then to make it to regionals, to even have a shot to get to the games or the championships. Anyway, so, but from that, just before I move on to that, like from that, I'm so thankful for going through that, because the lessons I have learned from that experience has guided me, like, or not guided me, but it's shown me things in life. Like it's opened my mind up to things that I would have never ever experienced or thought of if I didn't go through that. It's like that whole, there is no success without suffering, right? And
what's your favorite? Mike's got a favorite saying about that, about adversity, haven't you? About success being bred through adversity, or the trials of adversity. So
seems to certainly be a common theme amongst a lot of the successful people we have we've interviewed, that they've overcome some form of adversity and sort of come through it stronger.
Yeah, and I mean, my personal belief, and obviously that's just my personal belief, but it is to be truly successful, and it goes so far beyond just sport. To be truly successful at life, and I'm not talking about financial, I'm not talking about sport, I'm just talking about whether it's spiritually or emotionally successful. I feel like you have to go through that adversity, or some sort of adversity in your life, and it's different for everybody, right? Everybody goes through their different struggles, but it's how you deal with those struggles that really, really put you either on the front foot or on the back foot, depending on what choices or decisions you make. And so I guess coming back to your first question, Nate, was that year was, I guess, the year that it's changed my life, because not because I made the CrossFit Games, but because of the lessons that I learned through silly things that I was creating in my own mind, and the ability to then overcome that. And I overcame it with the help of, I couldn't even tell you how many people that I spoke to, that I'm so grateful for and thankful for, that, they would give their time and, time to work with me. And so
it's almost like having gone through that, such a tribulation and such a huge level of adversity has now kind of taught you to take away the limitations in other aspects of life. And
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It was, it's incredible what, and then obviously then to top it off, I managed to qualify, like I sort of got through that slump, got to regionals, which was a huge breath of fresh air. I was able to take a breath, because it's about a month and a half or 2 months, I think, between the two stages. So I was able to take a couple of weeks off, just refresh my body, refresh my mind, and that helped a lot. And then I started seeking help. I just knocked on every door of every person that I knew that knew anything about sport. And the amount of people that reached out and helped was unbelievable. And you can take a little bit from everybody and piece it together to work for your own needs. And then managed to qualify. So it was the most amazing feeling. Like, I was in tears. It was unbelievable to finally reach the goal that I worked really, really hard for.
Wow, that's awesome, bro. And then you did the games, bro. How was that? Must have been an absolute eye-opener.
Unreal. That was an experience. We did, I think it was 13 events over 5 days, ranging from, we had to do, the first event we did was a 500-meter swim into a 2K paddle. So you paddle for 2 kilometers on a knee board, and then you swim 500 meters back. So it was a 1K swim and a 2K paddle, essentially, So ranging from something like that to where we had to do, again, heavy snatches, heavy clean and jerks, string it together on multiple repetitions. We had to do running, push-ups, pull-ups, like you name it. We were climbing ropes, we were flipping 600-pound fridges. It's like this thing they call it a pig, but it looks like a fridge. What's 600 pounds? Like 280 kilos or something. And you got to flip it like end over end.
Like a car flip, like a car flip and strongman.
Like a tire flip. Yeah, like a tire flip.
Cool.
Yeah. So you got to flip that thing for, I think it was about 30 or 40 meters, 30 meters, I think. Then you had to climb a rope 4 or 5 times, and then you had to walk on your hands for about 40 meters to finish the event, So the combination of those 3 things were together. We did things like an exclusive barbell event, which it's a what they call a hero workout, which is a workout that's named after a soldier that's lost their life. So CrossFit quite often does that. So it was called DT, who was an officer and lost his life, and I think he was a Navy SEAL. I could have that wrong though, so apologies if I did. But anyway, so it was 5 rounds of, you do 12 deadlifts with 90 kilograms. So 12 deadlifts, 9 hang power cleans. So you bring it, you stand it up to just over your knee, and from just above your knee to a rack position on your shoulder, and then 6 shoulder to overheads. So 12 deadlift, 9 hang power cleans, 6 shoulder to overheads. You do that 5 times as fast as you can at 90 kilograms. So, which again, for 1 round doesn't sound like much.
One round sounds like a lot of fun. Anything more than that, I'm on the floor. I'm
exactly
all over. Oh wow!
All of us were on the floor.
Hey, so how did you go in that? Where did you end up and stacked up against the 40 best in the world? How did you fare? Because there must be, I imagine, like any sport, when you're talking about the top bodybuilders in the world, the top strongmen in the world, the top powerlifters, even, my experience was as a strongman being one of the strongest guys in the country, and then going and lifting in competitions where there were guys that could actually lift twice as much as me in some of the lifts. So, within that 40, there are a bunch of guys that are just on a completely different level to anyone else on the planet. So how did you stack up amongst that kind of level of competition?
I ended up 17th. So 17th out of 40. So, which I was incredibly happy with. And in hindsight, I would have probably, if I had gone in with a bit more of a killer mindset, like a little bit more mongrel, I probably could have taken another couple of spots. But the top 10 are those guys that you just talked about that are just on a different level. They weren't even within reach. But in saying that, like 17th for me was huge. I sort of set a very loose goal of top 20 when I went in, with not much expectation, or like I didn't want to limit myself. So I didn't want to say, right, I just need top 20, because if I put that in my head, which I think I did subconsciously, then you kind of you're happy with that. I wasn't going to be happy with it. I wanted to do as good as I could. I think
the saying there is that you achieve everything you believe that you can do, and those things you believe you can't do.
Yes,
so
100%.
Probably a little bit of that in there, but yeah,
100%. Which now looking back at it, I realize I didn't realize it at the time, but now that I've had obviously long time to reflect on it. That is 100% what happened, I think.
That's an amazing achievement, though. When you look at the sheer numbers to get to that point, and I can imagine you must have had a lot of support outside from family and friends and things to allow you to, train to that level and achieve what you needed to achieve. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an amazing wife who went on that journey with me. She was like, look, do what you got to do. And she supported me through all of it. And we had one young boy at that stage, two young kids at that stage. The youngest was just born. Obviously, my extended family looked after the kids when we went over to the States. So it's the support. I mean, like anything, right? Your support system is where it's at, right? Your team, it's a team effort, even if it's an individual sport, it's always a team effort. There's always someone behind the scenes doing things that allow you to do what you're doing, right? So 100% amazing support network.
Awesome, man. Hey, look, I know Mike had some questions he was dying to ask around training, so as long as his internet's working, we'll hand over to you, Mike.
Well, yeah, I had a long period there where I was just listening to you guys, and your faces weren't moving, so I assume the same's true the other way around. Look, I've got the utmost respect for
Mike,
yep.
You're gonna have to start again, bro. We lost the entire lot of that, and you're still frozen on the screen.
Hang on, I think though, Mike, as you're asking about beginners starting and how the coaching is handled, or how the coaches handle the beginners.
It's going to go sort of two ways. One for beginners. But then, let's say I decided I wanted to cross over to CrossFit, atrocious shoulder mobility, relative strength, but no functional strength whatsoever. I mean, you picked up a fair bit, I guess, from rugby going in. So it might have been a little bit easier picking up for you, but for sort of the average person, I guess, talking to the audience that are kind of maybe considering, I wouldn't mind giving that a crack. What's the sort of process? Is the sort of help and quality supervision there? Because the knock was always.
Oh damn! That was close. We almost had it.
They're going for max lift out sort of in the, I guess, other circles.
Yeah. So I got you froze again, but I'm pretty sure I got that because it's a pretty common theme. What you just spoke about. So. There's no denying it. So when CrossFit hit its major boom, I guess, which is like 2010-ish onwards, it just blew up worldwide. Every person wanted to open a CrossFit gym. They thought it was an easy money-making way. You had to do a 2 or 3 day course to be able to become level 1 certified, which means you are now able to coach CrossFit. There was not much supervision over that. And yes, you're correct. A lot of people got hurt. So people opened gyms that should not have been opening gyms. And that's 100% true. So I guess my advice for someone that's looking to join CrossFit, which, I'm still completely in love with the sport. I will always train that style. And I will compete, even if it's just small competitions, as long as I can. But you got to face the truth. And a lot of people made a lot of mistakes with coaching. That's 100% true. So we've had issues right from the get-go with that. And I guess the beauty of it now, a few years on, a lot of those bad gyms where people used to get injured have been filtered out. They ended up closing their doors purely because if you provide a service that's, first of all, injuring your clients, second of all, not coaching them properly, making them do max lifts on day one or week one or whatever, on something that they've potentially never done before, with zero technique, you're going to lose those clients because they are going to get hurt. And so a lot of those bad gyms have been filtered out now because they purely just couldn't keep their doors open. All their clients got injured, or whatever. But I guess my advice, and I guess this goes for a lot of gyms, you know, you can walk into any gym and you can spot a good coach or a good gym from a bad gym. So if you're just a person coming off the street that's heard about it, that don't necessarily know much about gyms, my advice would be to do a little research, ask around, find, you know, I mean, with social media these days, it's so easy to get in contact with someone that potentially knows the sport. Like myself, for example, I have an Instagram account that's open to anyone, you know, so you could Google CrossFitters in New Zealand or CrossFitters in Hawke's Bay or CrossFitters in Auckland, and a bunch of names will come up. And I feel like my advice would be to ask some questions, you know, where would I go? Where should I go if I'm a beginner? I've never trained before. What gym is the best one to go to as far as CrossFit gyms goes?
Hey, Kevin, just before we move on for that quickly, what's your Instagram handle for those people that want to follow and, you know, find out a bit more about CrossFit, that want to have a look at what someone's actually done?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's at Kev_Manuel.
Manuel with an E.
Yes, Manuel. Yeah, so at Kev_Manuel.
So if you want to follow that, guys, jump on the Insta and you can have a look as well. So sorry for interrupting you there.
No, it's okay. Yeah, and I don't post a lot. Sorry, I should post a bit more, but I've gone a bit slack with that. After I've sort of stopped my international competition days, I sort of buttoned off that. But anyway, I mean, message me or whatever, that's no problem. But again, I know so many coaches that are excellent that would guide new people through the mobility requirements, through whatever it is that they need to become successful or achieve their goals, whether that goal is weight loss, whether it's muscle gain, whether it's just becoming a little bit fitter, whether it's confidence, whatever your goal may be. There are coaches out there, CrossFit coaches, many of them, that will help you do that step by step. But you're 100% correct in saying that there's been some bad, like, I guess, blood or whatever you want to call it with CrossFit, because of guys being able to just open gyms when they want, how they want. And yeah, a lot of them have failed because of that, because of bad coaching.
I think you guys might have copped a bit of bad press, really. A, because of the publicity of the sport, but B, because of the sheer numbers. Because if we had, you know, tomorrow, all of a sudden bodybuilding became the thing to do and 20,000 new people started bodybuilding tomorrow, the ACC stats would look horrific in a month's time. So I think, you know, part of it's probably, you know, just a numbers game, but also, I guess, because it is a technical sport, you know, you don't put someone into the front row of a scrum and expect them to live scrummage, you know, it just doesn't happen. You need the technical background. So yeah, good point, guys. If you are interested, or even if you are lifting, you're doing CrossFit or just lifting at a reasonable level and you want to improve, the investment in some coaching and technical expertise will help you a hell of a lot more than trying to muscle your way through stuff and potentially injure yourself. So
100%. And just to add to that is, be honest with your coach, communicate. Like if you're going, and I know a lot of people are shy, especially if you're new, you know, and we could talk about that. I'm going through that right now. I started jiu-jitsu and it's an incredible learning experience. And so when you're starting something new and you're in an intimidating environment, it's quite often hard to speak out, but it is so important for your own benefit. Even if you just tap your coach on the shoulder and pull him to the side and just say, look, and what I mean by coach is if you're joining a CrossFit gym, there's always a coach on the floor. Just say, look, I don't know how to do this, or can you help me with this? Or what do I need to work on to get better? So communication is key. Don't be shy to ask questions. If your coach does not want to answer your question, you're in the wrong gym. Walk out the door, go find the next one. You know, if you know for a fact, like if your coach, you're paying a fee to go to this person, if he does not want to help you or answer your questions, 100% the wrong place for you. You shouldn't be there anyway. You know, you should be somewhere where someone is willing to help you. If you're willing to pay the fee, they should be willing to help you and do whatever it takes and give you advice and guide you so that you can achieve the goal that you've set out to achieve. So I think communication from your part as a client is super important as well. Don't be shy. Ask questions. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Mike? Sorry.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yep, absolutely. That was kind of as I suspected too. I wanted to switch tack a little bit to, I love me a bit of science. It seems to me that a lot of your events are based around mainly that lactic acid energy system, sort of peaking at about 1 minute, sort of max capacity around sort of 2 minutes. What is the breakdown of sort of say, when you went to the World CrossFit Games, how many of them were in that kind of range, and how many were outside that, and were those the most difficult kind of events?
So good question. So obviously the first event that I spoke about, the swim and the paddle, was not in that range. That was about a 45-minute event, completely zero. I mean, if you get into lactic threshold and that, you're in trouble early on. So we probably, I would say the split would be 40-60%, or 40% being outside of that lactic threshold range, where it's a bit more endurance, but more.
Would that be all higher, or would there be any lower?
Sorry, come again?
Are they all the sort of 40% that are outside that range on the higher end, or do you have some that are lower end? The sort of do the sort of power clean ladders with sort of 1 rep at each weight, that sort of thing?
No, not at all. No, so some of it is, so events can literally vary from 2 minutes all the way up to an hour plus. And so events outside, so a lot of it's, I think a lot of the programming is done because of potential time pressures, because it's all those stuff's aired on TV now. So they've got to work in a little bit with that, I think. So it's probably 60% of events, I would say, is under the 20-minute mark, and with 40% of them pushing over, because obviously they have to test. Their claim is that they test for everything. They're trying to find, which is definite in brackets, but they're essentially trying to find the fittest person in the world. The person that is not the best at any one thing, but a jack of all trades that can do a little bit of everything and is really, really good at that. So they have to test all ranges of, energy system. They have to test all your energy systems. They have to make sure you can handle lactic threshold, lactic pain. They have to make sure aerobic system is on par. Your anaerobic system's on par. Like, they have to test you in all ranges. And again, like everything, I mean, it's still a reasonably new sport. It started in 2007. So it's like 13 or 14 years old. So like anything, as the time has gone on, they've gotten better and better and better at programming and testing you on a range of different things and a range of different energy systems.
And is that they do a lot of lactate stacking, or is there sort of lactate clearance with some breaks in between? Do you train differently for those sort of things?
You're going to have to define lactate stacking for me. Sorry, mate.
So, I mean, particular muscle groups where you'll kind of go with short breaks in between to kind of to build up that lactic acid, as opposed to sort of rotating through the muscle groups and giving different groups an opportunity to clear that lactate.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. They stack it all right. Sometimes they'll just, like, you might get an event that just destroys your shoulders, and it's all about muscle endurance. So in other words, you're hardly breathing heavy, but your shoulders might be feeling like they're going to fall off. So a complete muscle endurance events. And obviously it's not always shoulders, but it could be, it could be your legs, could be just a pure squatting event. You might do 4 different types of squats. You might do front squats, back squats, overhead squats, single leg squats, all in one event. So your legs are fried. Or what they might do is they might put you on an air bike, an assault bike. And they might say, right, you've got, in 3 minutes, do 30 calories on the assault bike, do 10 back squats at let's say 120 kilos, and then you've got to do max burpees for the rest of the 3 minutes. So you're gunning it right from the get-go. And so then you have to be able to move at 140 kilo, or what did I say, 120, 140? Yeah, but anyway, so that's, for me, for example, that's a half decent weight. That's well over my body weight. I've got to move that 10 times under severe lactic fatigue from the assault bike. you know, so you're already fatigued, then you've got to be able to move that weight efficiently so that you've still got energy to do a minute's worth of burpees.
I just need a reminder. I need a reminder at this point. What is the attraction in doing this? It sounds like absolute hell. No, it sounds awesome. I've got to say that.
I'm a sucker for punishment.
I've got to say, you know, while you're explaining it, I'm kind of sitting there thinking it through, thinking how phenomenally hard it would be, and probably, you know, I think a lot of us would underestimate how hard it is. I'm certainly not underestimating how hard it is. And I think, you know, the feeling that you must get when you succeed, or particularly when you do a PR in one of those things, like from a neurotransmitter payback perspective, you know, you must get some serious dopamine and release after that lot.
It's huge. Even just completing some things. Like completing something in a time cap. Quite often they set time caps because they've got heats to get through. So let's say, for example, they give you 15 minutes to complete X amount of rounds of whatever. Sometimes just finishing that, you're in so much pain. That's what I mean. The whole mental side, like, it's the most pain. Like, I've broken bones. I've been punched in the face in rugby. I've done many injuries. There is no pain like that pain. There's nothing like it. But like you say, the rush afterwards, when you complete something and you've just had to give a little part of your soul to complete this, the feeling afterwards is incredible. It's just like you've just given 200%. You didn't know you had 200%, but you had to give 200%, and that's what you gave. And the feeling afterwards is just phenomenal.
That's awesome, man.
You must have some pretty sophisticated recovery protocols to do 17 of those events in 5 days. What do you do at events?
Yeah, absolutely. So recovery it's all about recovery. The CrossFit Games is all about it's almost an outlast thing. So it's all about nutrition, like eating, getting food in you straight after. Most CrossFitters have really, really high carb diets, quick energy, obviously glycogen to the brain as quick as you can. There's some keto guys, but they're few and far between. Most guys, it's just like, if I burn 1,000 calories doing this, I'm going to replace it with whatever I can in the next 10 minutes. And then it's ice, heat, rest. Sleep is incredibly important. Sleep is like having naps between events if you can. Not everyone can do that. But compression, physio. So we get, generally you come off the floor, you eat something, smash a Powerade or whatever, try and get some sugar in you, and literally straight into the physio room. You get body work done straight away. They start massaging, trying to get rid of your lactic acid, trying to flush all that out. Generally it goes ice bath, then straight into the masseuse, like the massage tent, and whatever you just got hammered on, your legs or your arms or whatever, they'll start working on that. They'll do 15 minutes on that. Then you go, you try and eat some more, and then you just rest. You try and keep cool, and you wait till your next event. But the guys that are successful are the guys that recover the best. And generally, the guys that recover the best are the guys that train the smartest. That's sort of a general rule of thumb, I guess. It's all about the training as well, the preparation, simulating situations that you might get, doing weekends. Like we used to do weekends where we'd get a bunch of buddies together and we'd do a weekend training camp. We'd simulate the 3 days over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'd go up to the Mount or up to Auckland or whatever, and we'd do a full simulation, full walkthrough, try and just get that absolute game day vibe, the atmosphere, the feeling, the competition, all that type of stuff. Get it dialed in before you get to game day.
The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle, right?
Absolutely.
I was saying, hey, look, we could go on for hours. We really could, because there's so much more that we could talk about, particularly when we start getting into some of the technical stuff. But yeah. I can't hold everyone up for too long tonight. And so, as is our tradition, we always hand over to our guests at the end to thank those people that are near and dear to them, those people that have supported them, any of their sponsors, anything like that, or just anyone they want to do a shout out to. So, Kevin, the floor's yours.
Oh, thanks, guys. Hey, look, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. It was nice meeting you, Mike, and obviously Nate. I've met you a couple of times now. But it's been awesome. Like I said, it's been a minute since I've done one of these, and it's really cool to do it. And I love talking about these things as well. It's a big passion of mine. Talking about sport, high performance, all that type of stuff. As far as I guess sponsors goes, I've been supported over my CrossFit career by a company called Industrial Athletic. They're a equipment supply company based in Auckland. They were instrumental in allowing me to travel, to compete, and also providing me with gear to train over the course of my, I wouldn't even really calling it a career, sounds stupid, but just I guess my competitive days. And then it's other than that, I still work with Newseast, who's a nutritional supplement company, and they're incredible as well. I love their product, and they've been very supportive through the time that I've been doing this. And again, just really thank you guys for the opportunity, and hopefully I'll see you guys again.
Thank your wife. Thank your wife.
I mean, needless to say, honestly, my wife knows. Like, she knows how much it means to me, and she's been with me through all of it, mate.
I know. Big shout out though to all those supportive partners out there that allow their husbands and their wives to do the things that they love doing, and supporting them, because as you said, the sports that we do are incredibly individual sports and almost selfish at times, but you can't do it without a team. So big shout out to all those people, Right, so people, you guys have a great week. Again, productive training, stay safe out there, and we will catch up with you later down the road. We're out.
Thanks, Ross.